Hi, my name is Ashlyn Day, and I'm going to do my presentation over insulin pumps. So we're first going to start off with diabetes, because without a talk of this, you're not going to understand what an insulin pump is. So diabetes is a disease when blood glucose or blood sugars are too high and can cause either type 1 or type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is usually called insulin-dependent diabetes. Often begins in childhood. It is when the body doesn't make insulin at all. So your immune system actually attacks and destroys the cells in the pancreas that make insulin. So this can be very deadly if it's untreated. So pretty common, but and you have to do insulin every day in order to make your insulin. But type 2 cannot make or use insulin well at all. This is actually the most common type. Occurs in middle-aged and older people. O-rate is most likely the cause of type 2. That's why it's so common. Type 1, they don't really know why there's a cause. It's just pancreas, or can't make that, or the immune system attacks, and they're still trying to figure out why that happens. So the next slide is what are insulin pumps and why. Obviously used for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. It is a small computerized device that delivers in two ways. One of those two ways is in a steady, measured, and continuous dose, often called the basal. Or the second way is as a surge dose at your own direction around meal time. And that's more common as called the bolus, is what it is. But, and the cost for insulin pumps, so with insurance, is roughly around $1,000 to $2,000. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but when I did my research, that's what it was, because without insurance, it's $4,500, between $4,500 and $6,500 without insurance. But so with this pump, its doses are delivered through a flexible plastic tube called a catheter, and with this, you take a small needle and inject it through the skin into the fatty tissue, and it is taped in place. With those two ways, the basal one is where you program the insulin pump to say hey, I need this dose at so and so times of the day. The second one, which was the bolus, is more to control the rise in your levels during mealtime. So before you eat a meal, you need to know what you're eating and determine okay, this is how much insulin I need, and this is how much insulin I'll need after the meal as well, which is very important. But these insulin pumps are to monitor your glucose level. They're really effective, but there have been some problems and indications that they aren't the best thing, and that'll be talked about later in the slides. So how did it come to be? This came to be, it's been in existence for about 20 years. The first pump was in the 70s, and it was the size of a microwave oven, which was insane to find out, because microwave oven, it's huge compared to the little pumps that they are today. I mean, they're tiny little, you can clip it onto your belt. But so the first pump did the same functions as it does today. Just it obviously wasn't the same, but just injecting insulin every 5 minutes, which that seems really extreme. Now with the two different ways that it can do today, you can program it and then at the time of each meal. But after they did the first one in the 70s, some researchers at Yale actually were why don't we make something that's more useful for people who have diabetes, and it's a little, belt thing that can go clip to your belt. And so they actually thought of the insulin pump. And what's crazy is they got their idea from the chemotherapy pump, with the idea that you can clip it and then take your daily dosages of medicine throughout the day. And so they saw cancer patients with it, why don't we use that for insulin pumps for people who have diabetes? And the first one was about a pound, roughly, and it was the size of an aerosol can, but more rectangular. In order to use, you have to go under psychological testing and at least for 1 week stay at a hospital, which I thought that was really interesting too, because usually today, if you go to your doctor and you're diagnosed with diabetes type 1 or type 2, he talked about what ways you can do and insulin pump if you want to do it, excuse me, or not. And back then when they first came out with it, it's like you had to go undergo psychological testing and a 1 week stay at a hospital, which I thought that was pretty extreme, but it's what they needed to do. With the next slide, how is it used today in the FDA? So as I mentioned before, today, people can decide if they want a preference for it or not. People do the research on it and realize like, oh yes, I do want this, or no, I don't, which is understandable. I can see both ways. It's anyway, how is it used today in FDA? So, sorry, I'm looking at my notes and I can't read what I wrote, but obviously what I said, whether to use a pump is the person's own decision. So actually in 2017, September of 2017, let's see what it's called, Medtronic insulin pump infusion sets did a recall in 2017, September 17, which I was quite shocked about that because I don't really know anybody in my family that has diabetes right now. So like reading this, it was interesting to read because I didn't hear about it in 2017. I had no idea because I really don't know anyone that's close to me. I mean, other people might, but this was news to me, and this was over a year ago. But it happened due to the concern over a component linked to potentially deadly consequences for users of the pumps. According to the recall, the vent membrane on some of the infusion sets would get blocked and create conditions in which too much insulin would be delivered to the user. Too much insulin can result in hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, which left untreated can lead to death. I mentioned that in the very beginning, we're talking about type 1 diabetes, and they don't have insulin. It is a deadly thing, and it needs to be treated. So this was like a huge thing that I'm surprised I didn't hear about. But with that being said, so after this was recalled, and then in 2018, Medtronic received approval from the FDA for the expanded use of what was recalled, the MiniMed 670G hybrid closed loop system, and to younger patients 7 to 13, which was really interesting because after it was recalled, then the FDA approved, hey, you can give this to younger kids now, because in the beginning it was just 14 and up, and now it's 7 to 13. But after this recall, a number of lawsuits have surfaced against Medtronic, which I can totally understand because that's huge. So the future of insulin pumps, researchers are looking into an artificial pancreas or bionic pancreas, and other researchers and bioengineers are looking as well. But the goal of the bionic pancreas is to have a single device that detects blood glucose levels and regulates blood sugar with insulin and other hormones without human intervention. Others are examining ways of encapsulating beta cells in a semi-permeable membrane to protect them from immune attacks after transplantation. So after, when they create this artificial pancreas and it goes under transplantation, they don't want our own immune system attacking that as well, just like how it attacks the type 1 diabetes and the hormones. They don't want to attack this artificial. But bioengineers are working on creating artificial beta cells that secrete insulin in response to glucose, which that's pretty interesting. That would be a really cool thing to see. But I mean, it sounds, believable, but an artificial pancreas or bionic pancreas, and you can't live without your pancreas, and that's just something I feel like it's going to take years to do, multiple years, and insulin pumps are good in some cases, but if they can't program, just like Medtronic, had to do a recall because their program wasn't doing it a sufficient amount and giving them too much insulin, and I just think that's a huge issue. I see the point in insulin pumps. It would help a lot, but I feel like it still needs a lot of work done in order to get it, like, I wouldn't say absolutely perfect, but 99% perfect. And like I said, I don't really know anybody with diabetes. I'm sure there's somebody down in my bloodline years ago, but no one that I know right now actually that has it, and I don't know anybody like through friends that have diabetes, which is quite interesting because it's type 2 diabetes is such a common disorder now, and I just don't know anyone, but from what I've read and done my research, insulin pumps seem to help, but there still needs that 99% perfect, insulin pump, but I feel like it's going to take quite a little bit, and then as well as the artificial pancreas. And I think it's interesting that they can still do research and figure out ways, but that's all I have. Thank you.